Yo guys, how's it going? AK Moto here. Welcome back to another one of my videos. Today we're going to be talking about this bike sitting right behind me, my 2021 Yamaha YZ250F. Now just in case you guys are new to the channel, this is my Yamaha YZ250F. It's 2021. We bought it off the showroom floor, and sitting right behind me, as you can partly see. Now I just racked up 50 hours on the hour meter according to the Yamaha app, as the bike actually tracks its own hours through the Yamaha Power Tuner app. So we just racked on 50 engine hours, or a little bit more I think at this point. And today I thought I'd make a video, come in the shop, make a quick little video kind of talking about my experiences so far with the bike, some of the things I love about the bike, some of the things I maybe don't love about the bike, some of the upgrades I've done, and just kind of where I'm at with the bike right now. So let's get right into this. Now before I discuss my experiences so far with riding the bike, I'm first going to fill you guys in on all the mods I've done to it as of right now, as of this video. And right now I'm not really planning on doing anything too major to it anytime soon. So let's do a quick little walk around of the bike so I can just kind of show you guys some of the upgrades I've done to the bike and kind of where I'm at with my maintenance. So like I said guys, we just hit right around 50 hours on the bike. And now at the 50 hours I did a full top end rebuild. So I did piston, rings, honed the cylinder of course, I did valve stem seals, and then of course all fresh gaskets and seals when needed. And just got the top end of the bike refreshed, and that was at 50 hours. More recently here, I re-greased the linkage. That's another thing I'm gonna do every 50 hours. So I just went in and re-greased the lower shock bearing and all the linkage bearings down in there. And then of course I greased those from the factory. So I started at 0 hours, greased them up, and then I'm gonna be greasing those every 50 hours. Some may say that's a little long to wait with the linkage bearings, but with my experience so far with this bike and how often I ride it, when I did pull the bearings off after 50 hours, everything still looked pretty good. So yeah, I'm gonna stick with 50 hours. That's just what's gonna work for me. Now for the swing arm pivot bearings and then the steering stem head bearings, those I'm gonna be doing every 100 hours, just as those don't really get that dirty, in my experience at least. So I'm gonna be doing those every 100 hours. And again, I did go through and re-grease all the bearings on the bike when I got it home, just to make sure everything has really good grease in it. I'll leave a link to that video in the top right of your screen right now. I don't remember exactly at how many hours I did them. I'll leave a link to this video of the chain and sprockets replacement in the top right as well. But yeah, I recently did the chain and sprockets, so I did both sprockets, the countershaft sprocket and of course the rear sprocket. And then I did all the sliders and rollers as well, just because maybe a little bit overkill, but I really like to just get everything all dialed in while I'm in there. So here I have a Sunstar front sprocket. I went with a Pro Taper chain, just a standard chain, non-O-ring. And then we have a, I believe that's a JT sprocket, all stock gearing, and that is a steel sprocket. And then for these sliders, I believe I went with either a Cherubies or Polysport. And then for these little chain rollers, these are actually Primary Drive brand, so that's a Rocky Mountain ATVMC brand, one of their in-house brands. I think these are a huge upgrade over the stock rollers, because these actually have steel bearings in them. So these are just overall much better quality than the stock ones. And yeah, same one for the bottom right down there. I also recently did an FMF titanium exhaust full system. You guys saw the videos on that. I have the header pipes as well as a silencer right back here. And then we also have the heat shield kind of on the other side of the silencer. Now one thing I do want to note is I ditched pretty much all the stock heat shields except for this one here on the left side, because I was finding it was actually kind of burning my boot the first time I rode it. So I did throw this one back on, but the heat shield on the right side of the bike I don't run because I just really don't need it. But I did reinstall the OEM one over here on the left side. Now power change with the FMF, I did notice a little bit more mid to top end pull, but it did sacrifice just a little bit of bottom end, low end grunt. But so far I'm pretty happy with it, and I do run no spark arrestor. I haven't tried it yet with the spark arrestor, but here I just took the spark arrestor out. And yeah, so far I've been pretty happy with the system. Definitely a pretty trick piece, that's for sure. Now I'm still running the stock Bridgestone front tire. I'm probably gonna swap that out at 100 hours or earlier. We'll just have to see. The front tires don't really get too worn out. But for the rear tires, I've actually gone through quite a few of these. Now the stock Bridgestone tires I'm not really a huge fan of, just purely because of the conditions I ride locally. They just seem to wear out kind of fast in my experience. And right now I have a Dunlop MX-53. I think this tire personally is suited a little bit better for my local riding terrain. So this is more for kind of mid to hard pack dirt. Has a little bit longer life in my experience. I actually run this tire on my 125 as well. And I have nothing but good things to say about this tire so far. Up here at the handlebars, I run Pro Taper bars with the stock clamps in the rear position in the triple clamps, so the bars are a little further back than further forward, because stock they actually come in the forward position and I have it kind of in the further back position. I have ODI lock-on grips over here just because they're convenient to take on and off. And then for the levers, these actually aren't the stock levers, but they are stock replacements. So they're pretty much just OEM replacements. I believe these are Motion Pro brand. I haven't gotten any fancy levers for this bike just because I don't really want to spend the money on a $100 lever when I can just carry a couple, $20 ones in the trunk of the truck with the toolbox, whatever, and works just as good. I believe the bend on these bars is YZ high. I'm pretty sure that's what comes stock, but I'm not entirely sure. You might have to fact check that. But yeah, these are YZ high bends. And then over here on top of the suspension, I have some little Motion Pro fork bladers. Now I did a whole video on some of these upgrades. Top right of your screen right now, I made a video on some of the top 3 upgrades for 2021 YZ250F. So if you have one of these bikes, I would recommend checking that video out. For air filters, I actually run twin air filters. I personally think they're just a little bit better designed than stock overall, the shape of them, but the stock one does work fine. So yeah, I do still run the stock one in my rotation of air filters as I have multiple, but when I do buy new air filters, I do get twin airs. Now, of course, as all you guys can see, I did plastics and graphics on this thing. I'm still running these stock radiator shrouds and a little air filter cover here, but everything else is a Cherubies brand plastics. I use a Cherubies just because I've always bought them and never really had any issues, so that's what I stick with, a Cherubies, and I have these graphics made up by Strict Design Co. Now, relatively speaking, I haven't done that much to this bike. Of course, if you were to compare my 125, which I did a full rebuild series on, and almost nothing on the bike is stock. Well, a lot of stuff stock, but I really went through that bike. This bike, I've mainly focused on maintaining it and just kind of keeping up on the looks of it. I haven't really gone too crazy throwing a lot of money into mods and stuff because, to be totally frank with you guys, I'm really happy with how the bike is right now sitting here. I have really no reason to upgrade anything when I'm already super happy with how the bike handles and performs. And yeah, so I've kept this bike set up pretty modest. I've done the chain and sprockets just out of necessity, and then yeah, the FMF exhaust is definitely a little bit of a mod that isn't essential, but yeah, overall guys, this bike is pretty close to stock, and I've kept it that way because, well, I'm happy with the bike. Here for the oil, I run this Yamaha YZ250 semi-synthetic. Now I just find this oil to be a pretty good middle ground between quality and bang for your buck. So this is what I run. I believe it's $30 for this bottle, which I believe is 1 gallon. And this will last me quite a few oil changes. Now for the filters, I run these little Neutron oil filters and these Tusk oil filters, just kind of whichever one's cheaper at the time. But normally these Neutron ones are. But these are literally the same exact filters, just different logos on the packaging. But yeah, I'll run either of these two. They're literally the same thing. Now recently I rebuilt the top end, so I had to drain the cooling system, and here I switched over to engine ice. This is what I run in all my bikes. This stuff's just super easy to find. That's the main reason I run it, and it's a pretty good coolant in my experience. But almost anything will work if I'm going to be totally honest with you guys, but that's what I run. And then over here for some kind of more day-to-day chemicals, I have my bike wash. This one's a Slick Products bike wash. Over here I got some Bel-Ray Super Clean chain lube. I like this stuff because it doesn't fling around and make a mess. I got some Maxima SC1, contact cleaner, suspension cleaner, just kind of some of those little miscellaneous chemicals that you use after washing the bike. And that's pretty much everything I've done to the bike, pretty much all the maintenance items I use. So if you guys have any questions about any of the parts or whatnot I have on the bike, feel free to drop a comment. I'll try my best to reply as many of them as I can. Now for my thoughts on the bike. Now so far I've loved every second of riding this bike. Now I'm a little biased. I literally own all Yamahas, so actually I think I'm as biased as it can get. But so far this is my favorite bike out of all the manufacturers. Go figure, I own it. But just mainly because of what Yamaha's doing with their reverse cylinder head and how the intake is up here, and the whole engine, or at least the cylinder head of the engine's reversed, so the intake's up here, then the exhaust is actually at the back. A really good recipe for making power on these bikes, and for these 250Fs, power is definitely a very good thing. Now a couple really good things I want to highlight about the bike is, of course, the Kayaba KYB suspension. I personally really like how it's set up from the factory. All I've done is set the shock sag, and I haven't even messed with the clickers. I'm not a huge suspension guy myself, so I'm kind of a set it and forget it kind of guy. I really think the suspension excels in just overall being an aggressive rider. So when you're taking harder hits on a landing, or just general stability, you know, you don't want the bike diving going into corners. I think this bike has really good hold up, but it's not to the point where it's stiff, where it kind of hurts your arms. I don't know if that's going to make any sense at all, guys. But I'm really happy with the suspension. It's definitely fitting for my, ability, and I think it'd be good for, a pretty wide range of people, from beginners to experts. I'm happy with it, that's for sure. I don't really have any desires for it to be any stiffer. I can see how maybe a beginner rider would want it a little bit softer, but in my opinion, I think they hit a really good kind of middle ground with the suspension that would fit a lot of riders, and I'm pretty happy with it. Overall, engine-wise and whatnot, this bike's been a really reliable bike so far, and I think that's one of the more important keys for me, as I'm just a weekend warrior. I'm out there having fun, and if I do race, I'm just racing for fun. So I think reliability is a really big factor for me, and so far this engine has been nothing but reliable. Actually, I can't really think of any times it's let me down. Recently, I did have an incident where the E-Star wasn't working, as the positive terminal on my battery actually came loose. Kind of my fault for not checking it. It happened right after I did a lot of work on the bike, and I couldn't get the bike started because, of course, the battery was disconnected. But other than that, I really can't say any times this bike's let me down. I'm still rocking the stock battery at 50 hours, and it's still going strong. And again, I just got done doing a top end. Everything went well with that. I'm not going to be making a video on that quite yet because it was my first time doing it on this particular bike. I've done top ends on 4-strokes in the past, but I just wanted to make sure to kind of get a really good idea of what I was doing kind of on my own, no cameras, just kind of get a good understanding for what I was doing first time around, not mess anything up. And then probably the second time I do a top end, I'll bring a camera along and show you guys. Now, there are a couple little negatives with this bike. I see two just immediately off the top of my head. One is the stock tires. For me at least, they weren't that great, especially the rear tire. It wore out really fast. And yeah, I'm just not a fan of the Bridgestones myself. The front has been alright, I'm not too picky. When I put on new tires, a new tire is a new tire to me. I can't really feel any difference between a new Bridgestone and a new Dunlop, which is the two I've ran on this bike so far. But with that being said, I can directly, see wear happening. And with the stock Bridgestones, especially the rear, it wore out a lot faster than I was expecting. And I've since switched to a Dunlop rear, and so far so good. I'm still running the stock front because it's performing all right, and I have no complaints, honestly. Front tires take a while to wear out on these bikes, so I'm still running the stock Bridgestone. But the stock rear tire is probably one negative, one thing I'd change out if you do get a YZ with the Bridgestones. Just a really soft compound tire, just not something that I would be running. Second negative would be this guy right here. This is a stock sprocket. Now this is really light, as this is aluminum. Aluminum sprockets are, well, very light, and also less unsprung weight, better performance for the engine, torque to the wheel, and just a little less unsprung weight. That's supposed to help suspension handling in general. But I will say this aluminum sprocket, as pretty much any aluminum sprocket will, wore out pretty dang fast. I think I did the sprockets around 40 or 45 hours, and yeah, I just did not expect to have to replace it that soon. But with that being said, this is an MX bike, it's a race bike, so I don't really have any hate on Yamaha for putting an aluminum sprocket on this bike, as with 250s nowadays, it's really just a horsepower race, who can get the most horsepower to the ground. And an aluminum sprocket is one of the ways that you got to do it. But I have switched to a steel sprocket, much longer lasting, and yeah, that's just something I would keep in mind if you are getting a YZ250F. You might have to change the stock sprockets a little sooner than you expect if you're used to steel sprockets. But if you are used to running aluminum sprockets, 40 hours or so I think is about what many people will get out of them. That's what I got out of this one, and this one was starting to chip off teeth, so just keep that in mind. Other than that, guys, I really don't have any complaints with the bike. Again, the rear tire wearing out fast and the rear sprocket wearing out a little fast, faster than the steel sprockets at least, were my only two kind of complaints. Other than that, this bike's been an absolutely great bike. It's been reliable, pretty dang good performing, but then again, this is my only bike, or my only 250F I should say, not my only bike. I have the 125 sitting right behind the frame here, but the only 250F I've really ridden for any amount of time. Of course, I did test ride a 21, I believe it was, or 2020 CRF 250R but that was just for a couple laps. I really couldn't feel out the bike too crazy. But so far, guys, overall, I'm happy with this bike. Now, would I recommend this bike to you guys? Most certainly. Honestly, I'm going to be totally straight up with y'all. Most brand new bikes off the showroom floor are going to be pretty dang good when you're buying a new bike. They're all, just so powerful nowadays. But I am very happy with my Yamaha YZ250F 2021, and I would definitely recommend it for you guys. And just a few small upgrades, like maybe a new rear tire, eventually a new rear sprocket, fork bleeders, air filter, just some really little minuscule stuff like that make this bike an amazing bike for your everyday weekend warrior or for your racers. I'm going to be honest, this bike from the factory is set up pretty dang well. I would not hesitate to buy this bike up and go race, whatsoever. This bike's definitely set up good for a racer as well. So yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed this quick little video, just kind of giving you guys a little update on some of the mods I've done to this bike, some of the upgrades, some of my maintenance I've had to do so far. Now again, maintenance wise, all I've done is oil and filter changes. So filters I'll do pretty much every ride, but I'll inspect them. Maybe I can get 2 to 3 rides on a filter if it's really not dusty conditions. Oil changes I'll do every 2 to 3 rides. Oil filter I'll do every other oil change, or sometimes I'll just do it every oil change. I do oil changes on average like once a month or so, so I'll most of the time just pop a new oil filter in there anyways. Tires, still running the stock front tire at 50 hours. Got a new Dunlop MX53 on the rear, happy with that so far. I'm greasing the linkage every 50 hours. I'm doing the steering stem bearings and swing arm pivot bearings every 100 hours, and then I greased those from the factory when I got the bike home. I'm going to be doing a top end rebuild every 50 hours, so I've already done one. Once the bike hits 100 hours, I'm also probably going to throw some new valves in there too. And at the 50 hour mark, all the suspension seals are still holding up fine. I expect to get maybe around 100 hours out of those seals before they blow. That's about what I got out of my 125 suspension seals in 100 hours. So at the 100 hour mark, I'll probably have to do those. The battery is still going good at 50 hours, and it doesn't have any sign of stopping anytime soon, so I wouldn't be surprised to get another year or two out of the stock battery. And yeah, guys, I think that's pretty much all maintenance wise. Again, comment down below, guys. I'll reply to as many comments as I can. If you guys have any questions about parts I put on the bike, maintenance intervals, what I use, like oil wise, any of that stuff, if you have any questions, leave them down in the comment section below. Again, I'll try my best to answer them all. And yeah, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I hope this was a little bit of a help to some of you guys who may be considering a YZ250F. I'm really happy with mine, and I have a ton of videos up on the channel of me riding and ripping around this bike and working on it too. So if you guys want to see how to grease bearings and that kind of general stuff, I have plenty of videos of doing that on the channel with this exact bike. But yeah, I really hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.